Ukraine has been hit in Poland by a missile. Missile hit in a farm in rural area of Poland, and the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile. Meanwhile, 2 people have died at the scene after the missile attack, and it is still unclear that who fired the missile. But Ukraine has claimed that it was fired by Russia, as it has been identified as a Russian missile. And on the other hand, Russia has denied any responsibility for the attack. On the other hand, NATO has called for an emergency meeting. So a missile has hit Poland, and it has hit Zewodo village near Ukraine, and it was hit in a farm in rural area of Zewodo. The missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile, and 2 people have also died at the scene after the missile attack. But it is still unclear as to who fired the missile. But Ukraine has claimed that it is fired by Russia. As I already told you that the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile. So Ukraine is claiming that this attack was done by Russia and the missile was fired by Russia. But Russia has clearly denied any responsibility for the attack and has said that it has no role to play in this missile attack. Meanwhile, NATO has called for an emergency meeting after this attack. So amid ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, we have this breaking news coming in that there has been a missile attack in Poland in a village named Zewodo, which is situated near Ukraine, and this missile hit farm in rural area of Zewodo. And this missile has been identified as Russian-made missile. Now, it is worth noting that the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile, and due to which Ukraine has now claimed that this attack was done by Russia. 2 people have also died because of this attack, but it is still unclear as to who has fired the missile. My colleague Abhishek Jha is joining us for more details on this missile attack. Abhishek, over to you.
Today morning, this Polish Foreign Ministry has actually informed with the press release that there has been 2 missiles which have fallen in the Polish territory, killing 2 people. And these missiles were Russian-made. So this is the one confirmation that so far they have. They have not said that these are the missiles that has been fired by Russia. In fact, there has been some remarks quoting President of Poland that could be this missiles could be from the Ukrainian side or forces who have been operating from the Ukrainian side, that this missile may have fallen mistakenly to this Polish territory. But 2 people have been killed in this incident, and Poland has also summoned Russian ambassador to this nation, and there is going to be some diplomatic escalation also. There is also NATO meeting that has been called by Poland, citing this Article 5. That also calls for an urgent meeting on any issue that a NATO member wants to have, and in consultation with all the members. So amidst all this Russia-Ukraine crisis, which has been going on for several months now, we have seen last 24 hours, there has been barrage of Russian missiles fired on Ukrainian territories, and the kind of escalation that we are witnessing in the recent days is again not hinting at any way calming the situation or this war or conflict situation getting better. But it looks like with the latest escalation, which has the first time any other territory other than the Ukraine has been hit by a missile, and 2 people other than Ukrainian or those who have been taking part in Russia-Ukraine conflict have been killed. And this is clearly a diplomatic escalation between Poland and Russia, and we'll have to see how NATO also reacts to this incident.
Abhishek, as the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile, doesn't it make clear that there is high possibility of this attack being attempted by Russia?
Going back like 30 years ago, Russia and all of Soviet used to be one part, and there could be some. We don't know yet which type of missile or how new this missile was, because a lot of ammunition that Poland has also been of the Russian origin. So we are not yet sure the missile, the latest missile that has fallen, is actually something that was made in the recent past, or it is something that has been made of 80s or 90s of the erstwhile Soviet Rus. We'll have to wait for that confirmation, but so far it's clear that the missile was a Russian-made missile, and it has killed 2 people, calling an diplomatic escalation where Polish government has called summoned Russian ambassador for the explanation of this. There has also been reports that there will be some that this missile that has actually fallen could be from Ukrainian report, but there are still no confirmation.
Right, Abhishek. We have Patikrit Paine joining us, who is a security and geopolitical analyst. Sir, good morning. A missile has hit Poland and the missile has been identified as a Russian-made missile. Your views on this?
Well, first of all, there was always this apprehension that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine potentially may someday go beyond the boundaries of these two countries and eventually spread in the rest of Europe, especially in eastern part of Europe. But secondly, at the same time, we also have to keep this in mind that there might be a possibility of false flag operation as well. A false flag operation basically means where the origin of something is disguised to pin a blame on somebody else. Now, if you look at Europe today, a lot of blame for a lot of things are being pinned basically on Russia. So we have to see if that is, if eventually it will be found out if it's a false flag operation or not. Number three, it may also so happen that there was a missile which was directed at Ukraine. It may have, by mistake, by error, have fallen into Poland. These territories are very near to each other. That option and that possibility cannot be ruled out because over the last, say, 48 hours, there has been a barrage of missiles that have been fired by Russia into Ukrainian territory after they have withdrawn from Kherson. And fourth, we also, have to keep this in mind that we have to wait to see what the Russians say. There is also another possibility that many of the countries of Eastern Europe bordering Ukraine, those countries have been used as a base for, logistical support for equipment supply to Ukraine by NATO members. So in that case, if this has been done in a retaliation to that by Russia, that issue also cannot be ruled out. And if it is so, then the fear that there has always been that this conflict probably in the next few months would potentially scale up and spread across parts of Europe beyond Ukraine. That possibility cannot be ruled out, and that is a very scary proposition. That would only mean that the prices of oil would rise again, the price of other commodities would rise again, the supply chain constraints that are there would also go up, and of course, the overall volatility and the risk of a bigger conflict and its implications for the world as a whole would be even more profound, and those propositions are very scary. These are not very good news when we are on the verge of entering 2023. But generally, the analysts all across the world actually have feared for a long time that 2023 perhaps is going to be one of the most volatile, uncertain, and a war-ridden year of this millennium, at least from 2000 onward. And in that case, we only can hope for best that it was a mistake or something else. But if it was intentional for any other reason, then we have very bad days ahead.
Right. We also have Mr. Vishnu Prakash joining us, who is a former diplomat and spokesperson of Ministry of External Affairs. Sir, good morning. So a missile attack has happened in Poland's village Ziwodo, and the missile was identified as a Russian-made missile. So, sir, was it an intentional attack by Russia on Poland, or Russia wanted to target Ukraine, but the missile mistakenly hit Poland? Your views on this?
Well, good morning. We'll have to wait and see what actually happened. This is a possibility, or such possibilities were something that were feared because miscommunication and an accident can trigger an escalation. Now, it is quite possible. If it is something that is intentional, the portents are not very good at all, because that would mean that the conflict has been taken into NATO, and a NATO nation is involved. President Biden has said clearly and repeatedly that if there is an attack on the NATO soil, then there will be a wholesome response. Now, or it is something which is accidental. Who has fired it? What was the intention? What was behind that. All this has to be studied very carefully before we come to any judgment, because this is a very sensitive matter, and I think we should hold judgment till we know what actually has transpired. The problem really is that the conflict has entered well into the ninth month. Each side is escalating. Russia is now using heavier weapons. Aerial strikes are being carried out like never before. Hundreds of missiles are hitting Ukraine, and the West is pumping armaments into Ukraine. So it is quite a difficult situation, which has ramifications well beyond the borders of Ukraine and Russia. Let us wait and watch and keep our fingers crossed. Hope that it is not an intended escalation, because that will be very dangerous.
So clearly, and coming back to the discussion, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, I'm sitting at Bali, where all the world leaders are trying to discuss about this whole issue of how this is not a time that there should be military conflicts around the world. In fact, the joint communique that is going to be probably will have this mention of India's Prime Minister Modi's phrase of this is not an era of war. But having said that, when the world leaders are trying to discuss and trying to create a situation of more conducive environment across the globe for other priorities that the world has. Russia-Ukraine conflict has continuing for almost 10 months now. It looks highly likely that the next year, the year 2023, we are all probably be going with a conflict that has been unprecedented nature. So, do you see this conflict, calming down, or probably if you could just throw some light, like what would be the way forward? Because neither side seems to be, pulling back, and the aggression from either side has not come down in the recent weeks. So, where do you see this war or this conflict going on looking forward?
Well, first of all, mankind or the human beings are the most intelligent species, and yet, in some ways, the most naive, because we refuse to learn from past mistakes, and we are doomed to repeating the same mistakes again and again at tremendous cost. Therefore, Prime Minister Modi did very well by recalling the horrors of the Second World War, the havoc that it had caused, and underlining that the leadership after the war had tried its best to foster peace, and you had peace for some 7 decades. Now, the challenge is that the non-Western world, the developing countries, and most of the world is horrified at this needless conflict. It is completely unnecessary conflict. It is fratricide. It is the conflict not between Russia and Ukraine so much, although Ukraine is suffering because it is being enacted on the Ukrainian soil. It's a conflict between Russia and the West. And the West is doing it remotely by pumping in money and armaments. Russia is getting humbled.